So here comes the interesting question. Do you think reinvention is becoming something new or it's actually returning to something true?
I think that reinvention is something that typically involves both. It sounds like I'm dodging the question, but it's a little bit of regrounding in who you are and what's important to you, but it's also about moving yourself forward into whatever the next chapter of your career is. So it's a little bit of both. And the reason why I say it's both is because I think if you just launch into the future and completely detach yourself from your past, that can feel a bit inauthentic. At the same time, if you just latch on to the past and cling on to it, then you'll never evolve and you'll never grow. So it's a little bit of both.
But it's not really easy to detach yourself from past though, right?
That is true. I talk to people all the time though who are trying to change industries or change roles or change even sectors or companies. And
Mhm.
for example, I might talk to somebody who was formerly a lawyer and they're trying to move into the business world. And so they are actually trying to detach themselves from the silo or the label of being a lawyer. And at the same time, they're trying to leverage those skills. So it is a bit of a conundrum that people do face where people feel a desire to move on from their past because maybe they didn't like their past job or their past role. And at the same time, you can't completely divorce yourself from it. So yeah,
That is
that's how I
true.
think about that.
Why do you think it's so hard to leave the status and something prestigious behind and move into something absolutely new and unknown?
Well, there's all sorts of both practical and also emotional barriers that stand in the way of reinvention. So if we just start with the practical, which I actually think are important, but are not ultimately what stop people from making a move because you can generally address these, but practical barriers to making a change might involve being able to rework your resume or CV, finding a company that you want to work for, preparing for the interview and being effective in that interview, networking with the right people who are in your new target industry. So that's one of the challenges of just kind of starting all over again. So those are practical challenges, but I think to get to your question, Shada, what makes it really hard to let go of your past is exactly what you mentioned. It's that status. It's your identity being
Mhm.
wrapped up in your former job title, the big name company that you used to work for, the benefits and the perks that you might gain from working in a glossy corporate office with a fancy lobby. And when you've worked so hard to get to that point in your career, it can be hard to let go of that stuff. It affords you a certain status in society, at least externally. People perceive you as being successful. And so letting go of all that is hard. And just letting go of anything that you've invested your time and energy into is very difficult.
Have you ever had that experience yourself where you felt that you might have wasted your time doing something that you were not designed to or did not want to do, but society or culture pressured you into doing that? And how did you deal with the regret? Have you ever had the regret?
Oh yeah, I have, Shada. This is
Can we
actually,
talk about that?
yeah, this is actually how I got into this line of work is
Okay.
just a little bit about me. I am Asian American, so Taiwanese American. My parents moved to the United States in the 70s, the 1970s, so that my sister and I could grow up in the United States instead of Taiwan. And so as an immigrant and as being part of an immigrant family, there are certain implicit pressures I think that you feel just because your parents have given up so much of their former life so that you can have a new life. And so I originally thought that I wanted to become a doctor. And now this wasn't really pushed on me by my parents, but certainly in the Asian culture, East Asian culture, and in other cultures, there's a few professions that are highly esteemed, and being a doctor is one of them. And so you feel that cultural pressure either explicitly or
Yeah.
implicitly. right? And so
Yes.
I ended up
Wait, doctor, lawyer,
doctor, lawyer,
accountant,
accountant,
engineer.
engineer would be at the top of the list.
That's it.
Yeah. Things like,
That's
uh,
it.
things like probably things more like what we do right now might not be at the top of the list. And so I
Yes.
spent a lot of time investing education, effort, energy into trying to get to medical school. And so I went to Northwestern University, known for its pre-medical science program. I studied for 4 years pretty much with the intent of going to medical school, took the medical school examination, which takes about 10 hours to get through. And then I eventually ended up going to the Georgetown School of Medicine. And I thought I was going to become a doctor. So I went there, and within about, I'd say 48 hours, I felt really misplaced. Like I just felt like I'd made a mistake. And
14 hours of
yeah,
the first the beginning of your
yeah. Yeah,
classes?
like right after the white coat ceremony. There's this white coat ceremony where they put a white coat on top of you because that's to signify that you're now going to take the Hippocratic oath, do no harm, become a doctor. And that
Mhm.
felt pretty good because it was sort of the finish
Okay.
line in some ways to all this work I'd put into getting into medical school. But then once you start going into gross anatomy at the time I was enrolled in embryology, it's a lot to memorize and it's a lot of learning and the pace is incredibly fast. And I was used to some of that pace at Northwestern, but it just felt robotic in a way that I didn't expect. It was like rote memorization, enormous volumes of memorization. And the creative
Okay.
side of me just felt like it was completely shut off, and there was no room for that. So, so I dropped out of medical school after 2 weeks and walked away from it. Yeah, which
I love it!
y-
You didn't even waste time.
no,
Did you have to fight for it?
I
Did you have to fight this to implement that decision, or you just were like, "I'm out"?
well, I definitely had to fight with myself a lot because I had spent the past decade convincing myself that this was the path. Everything I'd ever worked on was with this goal in mind. And so the biggest blockade to me leaving was probably me and just reconciling finally getting into medical school, a spot that a lot of
Oh,
people would
wow.
have loved to have, and then just walking away from all that, knowing that I actually had no clue what I wanted to do instead. So most of the fight was internal, but of course there was also like breaking the news to my parents and telling my father and telling my mother that I was thinking about dropping out of medical school. And this is just shortly after they probably then felt like all of their investment in me had paid off because I was on my way to becoming a doctor. So that was
Right.
tough. And at the time, a few
Mm.
really close friends of mine just were very supportive. And I would say my parents were actually reasonably supportive. Although my dad did tell me that my life was going to be a complete mess if I did drop out. And, but my mom said that if you're really unhappy, then you know you can't do this. And and I told her this is like literally this is like killing me to be here, and no mother wants to hear that
Wow.
from their
Well, you
son.
knew.
Yeah. So, but I felt a lot of regret and a lot of loss. So that's how I got interested in this line of work of helping other people pursue more meaningful work after they have perhaps somehow fallen into a line of work that they maybe don't love.
How did you grieve that transition? Because once somebody decides that I'm not gonna walk the path that I have been put on, however it happened, there's a grief, right? Of loss, like you
Yeah.
mentioned. How did you grieve that transition and entered into the new chapter of your life, embracing what happened in the past and bringing it as a leverage into your new career?
Well, grief is exactly the right word, Shada, to use when it comes to walking away from one's career path. And it might sound a bit melodramatic because people normally reserve the use of the word grief for losing a loved one, maybe breaking up in a long-term relationship, getting divorced, like that kind of losing a child. Like, I mean, that's the kind of grief when people use that word. It's got a lot of weight to it. And at the same time, I do feel like one's career, we invest so much energy into our career and our work, and we spend so much of our waking hours in our jobs. And so I feel like walking away from one's career is similar to like walking away from a relationship or losing somebody in your
Mm.
life who's been a part of your life. It's very similar to that.
Yeah.
Now, everybody grieves in different ways. In that case, I didn't know I was doing it, but I was grieving mostly on my own, actually. That I just wanted to be by myself. And I do remember telling my mother at the time that I was going to kind of quote unquote disappear for a while. I didn't want to like freak her out, but I do remember using that word that I'm going to disappear just for a while. I will reemerge, but I just need to be by myself right now to just kind of process this. And I actually intentionally kind of shielded myself from the people who had been such a big part of my life. And it wasn't to be mean and it wasn't to isolate myself. It was because I just didn't want to be influenced by people as I was trying to sort things out. So, I don't know. I
I
did a lot
hear
of
it.
crying. I did a lot of like staring at the wall, laying awake at night, trying to figure out what in the world I'm going to do instead. And I went through, I'd say, a solid 2 years of not really being clear on what I was going to do instead. And I was in Washington D.C. at the time, and so I was surrounded by people who, if you've ever been to Washington D.C., it's pretty much like a lot of high achieving postgraduate students who are
Yes.
doing lots of great
Oh,
things with their
yes.
lives. So it's not that great to walk into a party and say that you've dropped out of medical school when everybody in DC is asking you, "What do you do?" and you've got nothing to say. So, yeah, that was not pleasant.
Mhm. Oh, no, listen, I've been there. I have done all this too.
Mhm.
And I actually have a medical background as well. But when you know that this is not why you are here,
Yeah,
when you know it internally, then even walking that path will not make you
right.
happy. You know, you're happy or fulfilled.
Yeah.
So, how did you find your career change
Consultant,
consultant
yes.
now?
Yes.
And you help people make that
Mhm.
transition. When somebody comes to you, what point in their lives or careers they have reached that they feel the need to come consult with somebody like yourself?
Well, there's definitely some common demographics around these people, and everybody I always say that everybody's career paths are unique, and at the same time, I've been doing this work now for about 12 years, and part of it is through one-on-one coaching, which I don't do as much of these days. Part of it is through speaking to audiences who join my workshops. Part of it is through hosting my own podcast where I speak to people who have made major career changes. And there are definitely some common themes that evolve that are involved with when somebody finally makes the choice to reach out to somebody like me or just making the choice to move on from something. And I typically hear from people at a specific time of year, which tends to be around December or January. And it's very common. It's been like this every year I've done this work. It's around like November, December, or kind of mid January to late January. I will hear from people who it has occurred to them that they're kind of miserable and that they have been going on this road in their career that has on paper looked really good. So a lot of these people are quite successful on paper, but they are internally just they feel at odds with the work that they're doing. They're not proud of what they do. It doesn't excite them, doesn't energize them. They don't see their kids when they want to. They got no control over their schedule. They're doing work that depletes them, their energy. They got no energy for the weekends. And it's really the people who have started to see their work dissatisfaction trickle into the rest of their life. And that's typically when I hear from people.
Right. As a New Year's resolution.
Yeah, I think what happens is at the end of the year, people maybe they get to the end of the year, and it's a combination of things, Shada. I think they get to the end of the year, maybe they've gotten their year-end bonus that they've been working so hard to get, and it finally pays off at the end of the year. They spend the holidays with their loved ones and people they actually really enjoy spending their time with. They've got a bit of downtime to reflect, and then the year starts back up again. And they're back with the same colleagues, and the projects are still there. And there's a whole year in front of them, and they realize that this this break, this holiday break, has actually been a momentary escape from just misery. And so it
Yeah.
occurs to them when they go back to work. I'm based in London in the UK, and there's a term that's used pretty widely here, Blue Monday, which is typically the third Monday of January, which is the most depressing day of the year. And it's
No
yeah,
way.
and
You have a
there's
name?
a name for it, Blue Monday. Yeah, typically
Just one Monday or
one
all the
day. It is
Mondays?
a specific Monday in January. It's not the first Monday, it's not the second Monday, it's the third Monday. And it's because whatever residual benefit you got from taking a break from the holidays and being around the loved ones, it starts to wear off. The weather's miserable. Things are starting back up again.
Oh,
Your colleagues are still the same. The annoying colleagues that you didn't like are still back there. Like your disempowering manager is still
the
there.
reality
Yeah,
hits.
reality hits. Nothing's changed. So
Oh,
yeah.
no. Well, I get it. I get it. I wanted to ask you, what do you think are the signs of being misaligned? How do you see these signs in people who come to you?
Okay, there's a few things that really come up quite often, and I experienced all these myself. The number one thing that I hear from people is that they just feel like something is off in their career. They can't even put it into words, but they know something is off because when they show up to work, they're just not energized by their work. They may not describe it in those words, but I'll hear things like, "I don't like my job," or yeah, my projects are kind of miserable. Or I look around and I see people who are my colleagues and I don't feel like I'm like any one of them. I feel so different from everybody. Or this company's mission is completely misaligned with what I care about. And I even hear things like, yeah, I earn really good money, but I don't have any time to actually enjoy my life. Sometimes I'll hear things like, I I'm working really hard, never get to see my kids, I'm traveling all the time. And so all of these descriptions relate to some level of dissatisfaction or dismay or misalignment with the things that are important to you. So generally, when people come to me or if they come up to me at a workshop, I will hear things that relate to them not being able to have the things that are really important to them at this moment in their life. So there's also physical signs. Like people don't sleep well. They're exhausted all the time. There are social signs. They never get to see their friends. Their friends never hear from them. Their partner is upset because they're not present when they come home. So there's mental fatigue. So a lot of these things actually manifest in the rest of your physiological, social, familial life, your own personal well-being, and that is when something typically has to be done. And what's interesting though, Shada, is that most people will not move along or make a change until it gets really bad because they just tolerate it. Yeah, it's like an injury, for like a sports injury. You probably tolerate a slight sprain in your ankle. You're not going to go see a doctor until it gets really bad, probably. And I think
Why do you think we don't move when these things happen? Why do you think we choose to tolerate rather than make a change?
well, part of it is just risk avoidance. What I hear from people a lot is that at least I know what I'm dealing with here. And so if I move, I don't know, like maybe things will get worse. Maybe this is as good as it gets. So that's part of it. Part of it is just being risk averse, the fear of uncertainty, a fear of the unknown. But I think a really big part of it is not being able to let go of what you've invested your time into. It's almost like being on hold on the telephone, where have you ever been like on these customer service calls and you're waiting on hold for 5 minutes, And then you're thinking, I've waited for 5 minutes. Now I should probably hold on a little bit longer. And then suddenly you're on hold for 30 minutes with your cable company. Now you really can't hang up because you've come this far. So there's this sort of idea that
True.
I didn't come this far just to come this far. And so people cling on. It's much easier to hold on to something that's not great than to move on to something that is potentially, but not guaranteed to be better.
It takes a lot of courage and faith.
Yeah.
Faith in yourself.
Again, same thing. The analogy is with
And
relationships. Imagine you're with a partner and you know that partner is not right for you. And you know that your partner annoys everybody that they're around. You aren't proud of showing up with them. And yet you tolerate it because you don't have anybody who can kind of conveniently slot into that spot right away. So you continue to tolerate it. And
and you become what you tolerate.
yes, exactly. Exactly.
What was your own experience? How did you experience this very thing of not moving well, you had only 2 weeks. So for you it was like
Well,
this.
kind of. Yeah.
But
That, but
okay, what was your what were the manifestations of not moving forward and being stuck in your own life?
Okay, so I know I said I dropped. It seems like I just dropped out after 2 weeks, and that's that. But there's a whole decade that led up to that, literally from high school, secondary school, where I'm focused on the sciences so that I can get into Northwestern University, and I'm studying biology and chemistry and physics there, and I'm spending my summers working in biology labs and pharmacology lab at the UC San Diego School of Medicine, medical school, and I during those summer experiences, because I basically spent every summer of college working at these medical labs. I worked at the National Institutes of Mental Health, UC San Diego School of Pharmacology, and also Northwestern at a biomedical lab at one of my chemistry professors, Dr. Tom O'Halloran. And I have to say, at the time, I didn't really enjoy those experiences. I remember being at UC San Diego, and I was in a pharmacology lab, and I would always fall asleep at the lab when I was pipetting. I got so sleepy, and my job was to count cancer cells, and I would always miscount them because I was so tired, and I was so sleepy, and I was just watching the
Oh
clock
no.
all day. Same thing at the NIH, the National Institutes of Health. I found the days were really long. I was just kind of not really enjoying it very much, but I did it, and I think if I had paid attention to those signs, or if I'd even paid attention to the other things I was naturally interested in, like broadcast journalism and more of the creative arts, I think that I would have been able to get off of this train much earlier. But every time you kind of further invest in it, like in my case, okay, there's another year. Now I'm taking organic chemistry. Okay, I've gotten through that, did well in organic chemistry. I'm getting closer, done the medical school examination. That went okay. So it keeps on accumulating. And so it makes it harder to walk away from it. And I think it sounds kind of, it's almost embarrassing now because I feel like if somebody were to look at my life up until that point, if they had been watching me falling asleep, being bored, dreading going into chemistry class, like I think they would have said, like, "What? Like, just leave. Like, don't do this." And and I just did it because I really do think that sometimes, in order to rule something out, you've just got to go through it. You've got to
Yes.
just go through the misery of it so that you can be convinced yourself that this is definitely not right. I
Yes.
wish it wasn't like
No,
that
this
though.
was
I wish it didn't have to be like that, but that's how it is.
but you have to get to the conviction yourself
Yeah,
because no matter how many times other people tell you, if you are not convinced in your core, you think that there's something that you're gonna be missing.
yeah, yeah. You've got to buy into it. Yeah,
True. Did you feel any kind of physical dis-ease during those times
definitely,
that you
for
would you
sure.
mind
Yeah,
sharing?
sure. I can share that. And this, I think this happened at so I've gone through 3 major career changes. So one was leaving and the same thing happened every time. So one was leaving medical school to eventually pursue a career in corporate brand marketing. The other one was leaving
Right.
the San Francisco Bay Area when I was working at the Clorox company in marketing to move to the UK. And then the other one was in 2013 when I left the corporate world to then start my business now, which is focused on helping other people find more meaningful work. And in every one of those cases, I must say, I did feel kind of like physically and mentally unwell. Like it medical school, I remember feeling sick to my stomach sitting in the lecture halls. I can remember it very well like it's yesterday. Sitting in embryology class at Georgetown and feeling like physically sick in my stomach because I think because I just felt like I was really in the wrong place and that this was not going to go well for me if I stayed here. When I was thinking about whether I should move from the US to the UK, and there's a whole backstory behind that, most nights I couldn't sleep very well because I felt like I needed to make a move for personal reasons, which we can get into if you want. And then when I was in the corporate world, I remember just, again, just kind of feeling really depleted by my work. I was marketing ice cream for Haagen-Dazs for General Mills, and I just wasn't sleeping well, was always in a bad mood. My wife was complaining at the time because I was always complaining about work. And I just didn't feel very good. Like I didn't look forward to Mondays. I wasn't sleeping well. I um yeah, it just I felt like my stomach didn't feel very well. Actually, it's almost like how you might feel if you were in like a long car ride or something and you ate something funny.
That makes
Yeah.
that makes sense. That
Mhm.
makes absolute sense because here in our stomach, this is our creativity and this is our basically work,
Mhm.
the energy,
Yeah.
satisfaction of the work that we do.